any question or something else to say, this is your moment. Maybe I can start. I want to know how was the process? How long did you take with the community? How was this trust development? All this.
Yeah. I met Martison from Mentawai on the film festival, indigenous film festival in Ubud, where I showed some short films, which I shot in the archipelago. And he invited me to Mentawai to collaborate in a film project. And so I came to Mentawai a couple of months later, and we started to explore. He guided me deeper into the forest to one of the first cigarettes shown in the film. And then started a long process. It was shooting about covering. Working on the shooting on about 4 years, and altogether it was 3 times, about 2-3 months in Mentawai. And so also the editing process was over 4 years. While I still was teaching in Germany, I was editing the film. And also the research process was continuing while editing. And also for me, as a filmmaker, I'm always the first spectator watching the film myself. For me, also, always the research process is very, very fascinating. For example, like going to Amsterdam, meeting the anthropologist, reading his books, and learning more about the culture also from different perspectives, like the anthropologist or the grassroots movement, the investigative journalists, and so on. And I think this is the interesting point in this journey to meet this other culture, that you discover it from a lot of different perspectives. I think this is very important in documentary film, that you not only have one perspective, like following a character, making an individual character portrait, but for me personally, it's very important to explore it from different perspectives and do also this background research.
Very good. Someone in the audience has some question? Or may I continue? Okay. Before the film, we were discussing about the term animism.
Yeah.
Do you have other chance to experience animism previous to all this process with the mental, with the community, or?
Yeah. I mean, animism in indigenous culture is very, very strong and very similar all over the world. Um, and so it was nothing new to me. And I think it's the deeper roots of all of us. I mean, if you look in the New Testament, Christian story of Jesus, and he, like a shaman, is chasing away the bad spirits, and the spirits are moving out into the pigs. This is just old animistic roots, still hidden in our culture also. And yeah, that's. It was quite interesting. We also did Indonesian language version, and Indonesian audience told us animism is stigmatized in Indonesia still from the time of the oppression, and we had to search for a different term. And so we came up with something like a belief in nature, or a religious belief in nature, something like that. And I think this is a better term also for us maybe to describe animism, that it's just a much stronger connection to nature. Yeah.
Has the Mentawai a term about their beliefs? They have, because you are saying we have an animism, we want to develop other kind of terms. They can name it by themselves.
Sabulugan is a name for their belief. And there is a sequence in the film where also the language roots are explained, that it goes back to the term for leaf, part of the plant, and then offering, also connected in a language root. And but we had also discussions about the title, Souls of the Forest. The soul is called Simagere in Mentawai language. However, it's a very, very complex concept of soul, with different aspects, different incarnations of soul. We have a little bit like that also when we speak about the spirit and the heart. So I have two locations. So it's a very complex interpretation of souls. Soul levels, so it's always difficult to translate it, and we have to simplify it. Yeah.
Some questions over there?
Yeah, is there any networking with the Bruno Manser Foundation?
Bruno Manser?
Yes.
Bruno Manser, that's Borneo. So the Mentawai archipelago is south of Sumatra, and northeast of Sumatra is Borneo. I've been also in Borneo, and I have friends which are connected to Bruno Manser's foundation and who knew him. And of course, these old tribes in the rainforest are all connected in deeper historic roots, like the tattoo and a lot of different traditions. The bark they use for the loin clothes and so on. But it's I think something like 1,500 kilometers away, the forest area where Bruno Manser was and the Mentawai archipelago. Yeah.
Can you how to say? Isn't it a good idea to just fight together? Just to bring it together, all those forces for keep remaining the forest?
What is quite interesting is, as shown in the film, this very powerful grassroots movement and how all are interconnected. I've been on this Indigenous Film Festival, a lot of indigenous filmmakers all over the world came together, especially in Southeast Asia area, especially in Indonesia. And so there's a lot of collaboration and networking, and like you have seen in the film, insiders and outsider collaborating together. Grassroots movement from inside, but also support from outside. Is this in direction of your question?
Yeah, I guess that is, and I want to know if there's hope, hope for getting better and.
Yeah. As you have seen, the grassroots movement has been very strong in the last 30 years, and they had accomplished quite a lot. They were able to build national park. They were able to go into politics and win elections, and they have been able to keep away a lot of these logging companies. And now it's a little bit hard to predict how it will continue in the future, because the logging companies try again and again, and they have to continue to fight to keep them off. But when I compare it with Borneo, I'm really impressed how Mentawai people have been able to protect their culture the last 30 years, because in Borneo a lot of was lost, and I was just shooting in Borneo, and I was shooting with a tribe on the sea gypsies, and a wonderful original tribe. And just when I went away a few months later, everything was burned down and destroyed by the government. So Borneo is much tougher, and oppression of the tribes, especially Malaysian part, is much tougher. And so Mentawai, I'm pretty much impressed how strong, resilient they are, and have been able to protect their culture so far.
Hi. Really lovely film. It reminded me a lot of My Time in Melanesia, which has a lot of similarities. What I was interested in is there seems to be a cooperation between the environmentalists and the indigenous rights people.
Yes.
Which historically has certainly not always been the case, and often brings conflicting priorities, shall we say.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could speak a bit more about that.
Yes, I think it's just the opposite. There was more collaboration in the past, like for example, Survival International and World Wildlife Fund were collaborating to create this national park in the first reservoir. And World Wildlife Fund is focusing on wildlife, while Survival International is focusing on indigenous culture. And in the last decades, they were separating more and more because the NGOs protecting wildlife and animals sometimes have been very skeptic about indigenous culture being also a threat to wildlife. In Africa, the Maasai, for example, was a different. Especially here in Mentawai in the 80s, there was a strong collaboration in this point. Yeah.
Yeah, where I worked in Papua New Guinea, there was a significant conflict between the United Nations, I think it's called ICAP in those days, International Conservation and Development people, and the local people and the loggers as a third party. So there was all sorts of conflicts going on, and I guess it still continues in different.
But nevertheless, the indigenous tribes are key for understanding the ecosystem and the Foundation Mentawai just published a book with these 500, 600 medical plants the indigenous people still know, and they still continue the research. I think it's still very important that the NGOs collaborate. When I was in Borneo with the sea gypsies on the sea, there is a very strong conflict between maritime wildlife protection and the indigenous culture. Since indigenous culture, they live from the sea and in the sea. But nevertheless, especially the village where I've been was the village which in Borneo which has the most balanced relationship, sustainable relationship with sea life and wildlife. And we heard the news in February, March, the government will go out and destroy some of the indigenous villages. And I thought they go to the coast more close to the big cities where the indigenous people already have been alienated from this sustainable lifestyle. But it was just the opposite. The government targeted especially the last indigenous tribe which had this sustainable lifestyle and destroyed that one. So it was really a surprise. It's a big story with the how government and how the international organizations deal with it. Yeah.
For me, speaking about the hope, what is the situation about? From the local perspective, it's quite difficult to see what is the way to strengthen the communities for literally survive and the territory as well. From you, as a person that is from Germany and from this global north perspective, what we can do for support them from here?
Yeah. As you have seen in the film, it's just individual action which really makes a difference, like the photographer who went with the cigarette to the capital and spoke with the governor. And I witnessed similar things also in Borneo and other places. And so this really makes a difference. However, you are right, if you're here in Europe, and for example, you send some donation, you can't have this connection. You don't really, it's really, I don't know yet how really create this connection for people here who want to support. The donations do help, but how to get a real relationship and connection to what's happening and what a donation does help and the foundation work. And so I think it's, for example, very simple possibility to sign up for a newsletter of the foundation, and then you get news and updates each couple of months, and you keep in touch with what is happening. I always there are always good news, and also like I have another friend, a very young indigenous filmmaker in Borneo. He was 14 years old when he showed his first films in the indigenous film festivals. Now he is, I think, 19 or 20, and already did a couple of films. And he was able, with his community, to get back all the land rights. So they have now the documents that the land belongs to the tribe, and they can protect a very large tribal area. And this was also, to a great extent, thanks to his media work, his film work. So that was in Borneo, where it's so hard to preserve the culture. So it's really, especially collaboration of the grassroots movement and international organizations and media work makes a difference. But also, quite a lot on festivals, people ask me, what was the most challenging, the most difficult for me as a filmmaker? Was it like in the jungle with poisonous snakes and whatever? And I always told the audience, I didn't have any problems in the field filming, because I had wonderful support by the indigenous people. But the most difficult, really most challenging, that's the marketing when you contact the television channels. Then it's really, really, really tough because there's so much commercial pressure by the channels. And really to bring the film to the audience, that's the most difficult. Yeah.
So the danger is not in the rainforest.
Yes.
I
yes.
have to see it outside.
Yeah.
Over there.
Look at your products in the supermarket, all the ones with palm oil in them, put them back on the shelf.
Yeah.
This is a very, very impactful daily base.
Direct action you can take to help so many people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's also more healthy because this plastic-packed palm oil stuff is also the highly ultra-processed food, and so back to the market is the best.
Exactly. And also the traceability of the products, because the green label saying protecting rainforest palm oil,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe it's not the case. So, Alif. So there is other. Yeah, we have a bunch. Oh, come on. Sorry that the lighting is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will start just by one question. How was the connection to the Mentawai people? Did they trust you right away?
Yeah.
Did you need some time for them? Did
Yeah.
they treat you like a friend or on a professional level?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I already did a couple of short films in the archipelago of indigenous culture, and I went to the Indigenous Film Festival, and then I met other indigenous activists, and they invited me. So I already had very high-level connections with activists who have the best connections and best experience and wonderful guides and help in translation and whatever I need. And so we collaborated together, and all the process, like translations and reviewing, was done together. And that's also when I mentioned television. Television editors do interfere very strongly in the editing process, in reviewing. And I didn't have this problem. I could work together with the indigenous people on the reviewing and so on and editing. And so I had a very, very good working condition and access to the culture. And they were very welcoming, introduced by my friends. But it's also what is important to know that in Indonesian society altogether is very complex. There are a lot of different levels. Like in Mentawai on the coast, you have Muslim fishermen's migration and settlers, and so they have a very complex society, and you deal with a lot of different people, like authorities and so on. But altogether, we had pretty good experiences, like we shown the film in the capital of Sumatra, and the politicians came also to see the film, and we had basically very good discussion. And it's the same effect like you have seen in the film, like when Charles Lindsay went to the governor 40 years ago or 30 years ago. It has a positive influence to raise awareness and help to protect indigenous culture. Yeah, but it's a complex, very complex society in Indonesia.
And did the people saw the film? Did you show the film to the people?
Yes, yes, yes. We showed a film, and also Boroy Agok. He was one of the Sikares talking about oppression in the interview, and he was also watching the film, and he was after the film he was standing up and giving a big speech. So yeah, it was very fascinating. We have shown the film in Mentawai in different places. Well, was always a great response. Also, the politician from the grassroots movement has seen a film, and they also gave feedback, and we also were able to improve small scenes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my question or other concern would be a bit away from the environment, away from politics and administration.
Yeah.
And this comes to the religion aspect.
Yeah.
Over time and with the work that you have done, could there be a possibility of influence in the traditional way of belief with the influence of Islam? Because from the documentary we see that the schools that the children go to are Islamic schools.
Yes.
The majority of the schools.
Yeah.
And then we also had a problem with the Christian missionaries.
Yes.
And at some point there is a missionary friend that helps them come back to maintain to regain some of their cultural controls. Could their cultural belief system have some form of hybridity? Because this project is quite interesting for me, because I'm a PhD student, and I have a project. My project is almost similar to this, the influence of religious hybridity in sacred landscapes.
Yeah, it's there still is pressure of assimilation. As I mentioned, Indonesian culture is very complex, and there is also affection parties with national chauvinism, and the mosque offers free schooling to try to assimilate the tribal culture, and it's very complex. Still, the indigenous culture is very resilient. However, it's a danger for indigenous culture. For example, there's a revival of tattoo art, so the young generation rediscovers tattoo art. However, it's only the boys which are allowed, the men which are allowed to revive tattoo art. For the women, they used to have equally the tattoos, and for girls, it's much, much harder since the Islam-dominated culture in Indonesia puts a lot of pressure on the women. So also, for example, we have a scene in the film when I show the half-wild pigs, and we were working on this specifically because it's a very important pillar of the culture and important part of the rituals, the half-wild pigs, and the Islam puts a lot of pressure to stop that because the pigs are taboo in Islam culture, and so the Islam organizations offer to finance housing if people stop breeding pigs and so on. And that's the assimilation pressure. On the other hand, there's also still a little bit assimilation pressure by Christian missionaries also. But nevertheless, you know, if you have a look on the grassroots movement, if you have a look on the activists in favor of indigenous culture who want to protect the culture, it's very important to know that these activists also are very diverse. There are Muslim activists and Christian activists. And it's also, in this complex development, we have to be very careful. On the one hand, we see there is an assimilation pressure by nationalists and religious groups. On the other hand, it's not per se the problem of the religion, because they can coexist. But that's what I can say about it, this complex development. But it's hopefully that indigenous culture will stay resilient. Yeah, we can talk about it later on. I'm curious about your experience here also. Yeah.
It was other question from this side.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for the film. I was quite impressed about this festival activities for the spirit bird. You have been there, I imagine. How did it feel? Was it, well, I know, were you afraid? Was it a life-changing experience? How did it feel to take part in these activities?
Yeah, I think you reconnect very much in these origins of mankind, so it feels very natural. You rediscover these natural rhythms, like sunset, it's getting dark and quiet, and the change of rhythm, and they go asleep 8 o'clock, 8:30, and so on, and you adapt quickly. You sleep on the ground, it's more or less on a wooden floor, and you get used to it very quickly. And that's the surprising aspect, that especially the more deeper you go into the rainforest, the more pure and clean it is. My personal experience is that it feels very natural, and you reconnect to origins of mankind. That's my experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about the young lady who was in trance. What happened after her awakening?
Well, she recovered, and it's common incidents that it's normal that in such events somebody falls in trance, and they come back, wake up again, and you have seen how people care about it, surrounding it. That's also wherever you go in indigenous cultures all over the world. It's similar. If somebody falls in trance, there's the community caring about it. And it's quite interesting. She had this black clothes, and she was a school friend of the daughter, and so she went to one of these schools with Islam influence, and she had this conflict of identity. So she was covering all her body because it is obligatory in the school, and she had this inner conflict of identity, and that made her sensible, and a little, her vulnerability. You can feel it when she falls in trance. It's this process, this identity conflict included also. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. I saw at the end of the film that it's a German and Indonesian production.
Yeah.
And we saw in the film this awful silent film from past history from Germany.
Yeah.
And are you German?
Yes. Yes.
So how did you handle that? Like visiting them again after knowing the history that Germany has done to them?
Well, Also, one of the first anthropologists have been German. The first dictionary, which has been written 120 years ago, was by a German anthropologist. And also one of Baroy Ogok, he also told about a German friend helped them. So it's ambivalent, a very ambivalent history. Yeah, and so for me, my key experience was the story of Charles Lindsay, when I learned about the story, how they went together to the governor, and I saw how collaboration from inside and outside can make the difference. And so that was also the key experience and strategy for me and the Indigenous Foundation. And I think the ambivalence of the relationship of countries like Germany, France, and so on, with, it's typical, I think. Yeah.
So, Peter, thank you so much for so much insights. I guess we are rich from other perspectives, other knowledge, and also a lot of awareness. We have here at Ethnokino a ritual.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
This is something I want to explain you. This is something we give normally to our participants.
Yes.
And this is a memories present for you, that you remember this experience here by Ethnokino, and I want to explain something that is here inside.
Yes. Yes.
This is like an award.
Yeah.
This is the eye of God, el ojo de Dios. This is coming from a feminine community in Mexico who make this. And you, as a filmmaker, we want this, as you have the eyes of God in the pureness, because in this beliefs that God always sees beyond the faces, beyond the cultures, beyond anything that human being have, and sees in the heart. So this is what we want to give you as a thank you, as a memory for this night.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is a visionary award.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. That's really great. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yes, yes. And also, quite fascinating. They're similar. This special form. Also, I encountered it in Indonesia also, and it has a similar meaning. So it's quite fascinating. It's one of the symbols how all the ancient indigenous cultures are interconnected. Yes.
Amazing.
Can we take a picture of me?
Yes,
Yes,
of
yes.
course.
Yeah.
I guess. Look at
Great.
it.
Oh yes, yes. Wonderful. I hope it doesn't reflect too strong to the camera.